Right now, there is a massive disconnect in how the US-Iran conflict is being presented. On one hand, you have the president telling the public that the war is very close to over. But on the water, the US military has just launched an aggressive siege. Central Command has deployed roughly 10,000 personnel and dozens of warships to completely halt all commercial trade moving in and out of Iranian ports. We are currently on day 47 of this conflict. The fighting is paused, but that fragile 2-week ceasefire expires in exactly 6 days. Over the weekend, the U.S. Vice President led direct peace talks in Islamabad, Pakistan. Those negotiations ended without a deal because both sides hit a wall over Iran's uranium enrichment programs. The International Monetary Fund warned this week that the fallout from this conflict is already halting global economic momentum. The U.S. and Iran are currently locked in a volatile equilibrium. When the ceasefire expires in 6 days, the direction of both the military conflict and the world's energy markets will likely be set. With negotiations stalled, the U.S. is pivoting to what strategists call a diplomacy of attrition. The goal is economic strangulation, actively intercepting vessels in the Gulf of Oman to choke off Tehran's revenue. Iran is countering the blockade by utilizing ghost ships. They are deploying spoofing technology to mask their vessels' GPS locations, attempting to slip a minimal amount of trade past American patrols. But Tehran has a much larger lever to pull. They are pressuring their proxy forces in Yemen to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea, threatening to trigger a global supply chain collapse. Both sides are gambling that they can crush their opponent's economy before their own breaks under the pressure. It is a high-stakes game of chicken playing out across the world's most critical ocean trade routes. To forecast how this standoff actually resolves, military strategists and corporate risk analysts rely on a specific tool called a scenario planning matrix. This diagram maps out the core variables of the conflict. On the horizontal x-axis, we track the Iranian regime's willingness to negotiate a deal versus an outright refusal to compromise. The vertical y-axis tracks the scale of the military operations. Will it remain a limited engagement, or will it escalate into new, more destructive domains? By plotting today's intelligence onto this grid, defense experts have identified 4 specific endgames the world is hurtling toward. Forecast 1 is the grand bargain. If the U.S. naval blockade succeeds, Iran is forced to accept a multi-year pause on their uranium enrichment. In exchange, the current regime survives, and crippling economic sanctions are lifted. Forecast 2 sits in the bottom right, the strategic freeze. Here, Iran absorbs the economic pain and refuses to negotiate. Instead, they utilize asymmetric drone warfare to keep global energy prices artificially high indefinitely. In this scenario, the U.S. claims a victory over a severely degraded Iranian military, but it comes at a steep cost. American forces are left permanently maintaining a massive, expensive footprint in the Middle East. Forecast 3 is a resumption of kinetic hostilities. If the April 21st deadline passes without a deal, the U.S. escalates the conflict, actively bombing critical energy infrastructure like the oil terminals on Karg Island to fracture the Iranian state. Finally, there is the wild card. This is a low-probability, high-impact scenario where a cornered Iran, potentially backed by Russia, sprints for a successful nuclear test, upending the global balance of power. Bring the timeline back to exactly where we are today. Right now, back-channel communications are desperately ongoing through mediators in Pakistan to try and secure a deal. The massive cargo ships being intercepted and turned around in the Middle East today are the preamble. They represent the physical leverage being applied before this final diplomatic showdown. As the April 21st deadline approaches, the conflict sits at a dangerous crossroads. Whether this ends in a negotiated compromise or an expanded maritime siege will determine the immediate stability of global trade and the cost of energy for the foreseeable future.